In the age of the internet and social media, fashion has really evolved a lot. Popular fashion trends, especially those of tweens and younger children, have officially gotten to a point where I can't seem to keep up, let alone fully get behind each fad. I'm not saying I'm a fashion icon myself or anything, but if you would have told me 10 years ago that sweater vests would become not just fashionable, but especially popular with a feminine style, I would have been shocked. I still mostly associate sweater vests with Cody from Zack and Cody on Disney Channel, and honestly, he needs more recognition for being such a trendsetter before the sweater vest resurgence. When I was a tween, stores like Abercrombie & Fitch and Hollister were at their peak, and somehow having a little flying bird logo on the corner of your polo shirt was the epitome of fashion and trendy culture. But when I was even younger, before I started to venture into the dark, dank caves full of surf aesthetics and shirtless men, I strived to do almost all of my clothes shopping at a little store called Justice. Justice was specifically advertised as being just for girls, and consequently made some of the most stereotypically girly and feminine clothes, accessories, and decor of the time. But before there was Justice, there was its similarly themed predecessor, Limited 2. Limited 2 was just as fun and bright and girly, but was first introduced in 1987, lasting up until 2009. Because of this, some of the clothes that were so trendy by the time the brand started falling off are now deemed vintage and Y2K. But Y2K and vintage clothes are some of the most popular trends of the current fashion era. Between platform flip-flops taken straight off of an animated Lizzie McGuire and baggy pants not unlike a young Avril Lavigne's, these older trends are clearly making a comeback. Although, as much as Limited 2 clothes and others like it have made a comeback into modern styles and fashion trends, I have to say the Justice clothes of the mid to late 2000s, not so much. But just because most people wouldn't wear the older Justice clothes now doesn't mean that I don't still miss the store as a whole. It does still technically exist now, but we'll get into that later because first, I just want to talk about the chokehold that Justice had on me as a kid. There were arguably two essential elements to Justice clothes: bright and sparkly. Varying shades of neon were not uncommon to see on a Justice floor, and at least half of just the neon clothes were usually covered in some kind of sequins or glitter. Interestingly, this kind of bright and only somewhat obnoxious fashion style is actually still popular with younger girls today, though probably with more unicorns and emojis now. But Justice seemed to target a slightly older demographic of tweens more than young girls. Tweens refers to the stage of adolescence between kids aged in the single digits and full-blown teenagers, and really is just a neat and commercialized way of referring to pubescent children. Being a tween can be difficult. It's that point in time where kids are growing out of their younger habits and trying to find their own identities while also being too young to act like a teenager. That's where, in my case, starting around 2009, Justice came swooping in with essentially a whole store dedicated to that very group of misunderstood kids, offering a sense of style and belonging of their own. Abercrombie & Fitch and Hollister were still super popular, of course, and I did still try to wear the single Hollister shirt I owned as much as I could to seem as cool as possible, but again, Justice was generally more accepted as the tween clothing store, so it gained a popularity of its own, and the hand-drawn heart logo started to overtake the bird and moose logos within the tween market. The neon colors and sparkly clothes are just the beginning of Justice. Whatever was trendy with younger girls at the time, you could be sure to find it in Justice. Tropical flower patterns, leopard and zebra print, and those graphic tees that had puns about food with cute faces on them were just a few of the Justice staples that you could find in the store in the late 2000s. I was personally obsessed with this cartoon monkey mascot that showed up on a few Justice items back in the day, and I couldn't even tell you why. She just seems like she knows what she's about. When I was in 5th grade, I remember peace signs specifically were making a comeback, I think just in fashion in general, but especially in the Justice demographic. When I tell you I was so into peace signs for almost no other reason than because I was essentially told to be, it was serious. If I wasn't wearing my neon-colored peace sign earrings, I was still taking my matching set of Justice school essentials to 5th grade every day. The set had a messenger bag, because that's what I figured cool people used instead of a regular backpack, a water bottle cover, and a binder, all in red plaid with a big peace sign covered in studs in one corner. It might not seem like much now, but I really felt like such an it girl carrying this whole set around. I don't even think I really liked using a binder at school before this, but I knew I had to have the complete set to fully achieve the look. As much as I grew to really not like school later on, I feel like Justice deserves at least a small bit of credit for making me feel excited to go each day, even if it was just to show off my peace signs. And it wasn't just school items that were made into sets. Justice was almost completely filled with matching clothes, or at least pieces that were meant to be matching. Every style of shirt that didn't have a smiling food-based graphic on it came in multiple colorways, and each color had a corresponding skirt, pair of shorts, or set of leggings that only reached mid-shin with trendy lace trim on the bottom. These could also be worn under the skirt or shorts to get the most fashionable result. And if they didn't have an intentionally matching set, you could almost certainly still find something to throw together using their basics, including the iconic Justice cami, also complete with lace trim. The whole Justice brand, in retrospect, seemed to really just push the idea of maximalism. These matching sets created the perfect opportunity for buying the extra clothing item just to complete the look, or better yet, getting each style in every color. I know that creating matching products with multiple colorways is not a new thing, let alone exclusive only to Justice, but again, when you're targeting a tween demographic that may already feel like they're struggling with their identity or self-expression as they grow up, giving them style options that perfectly go together and will probably fit right in with the other Justice clothes being worn at school, the urge to buy all the cute and corresponding styles and colors was a real problem when visiting Justice. Not to mention that Justice also had accessories like bags, shoes, and hats, and homewares like lamps, chairs, and bedspreads, all of which came in matching patterns to fully infiltrate your life. There were also toys like MP3 players, webkins, and assorted plastic junk like those tubes that would yell at you when you flipped them upside down. So you can imagine that even if the clothes weren't appealing, anyone could find something they liked at Justice. Aside from my plaid peace sign moment, I don't think I had much from Justice beyond just clothes, but that didn't mean that I wouldn't have loved a fully decked out Justice core lifestyle if it had been up to me. Beyond the matching sets and fashion-forward aspect of the products, Justice as a brand also pushed a lot of stereotypically feminine ideals through its clothing and ads. Female empowerment and friendship were a couple elements that were very prominent in Justice stores and advertising. The physical catalogs they sent out played a big part in showcasing these ideals, like showing girls at slumber parties in their matching pajama sets, for example, which ties Justice in perfectly with these already established facets of late 2000s girly tweens, like sleepovers, nail painting, and girl-centric friendships. It wasn't just that young girls around this time were really into these activities and so there was promotion done around them, but more so that these girls dressed in all Justice clothes and doing the funnest activities with their hair perfectly styled and their clothes all perfectly matching really drove home the idea to their main demographic that Justice girls equaled cool girls, and that if you weren't having a Justice branded sleepover, then it just wasn't as good. Whenever these magazines would come in the mail, I would love to flip through them for the clothes, of course, but also to kind of just stare in amazement at all of these girls living their best Justice-centric lives and wishing I could look and be as cool as they were. Outside of the catalogs, shirts and other products would have different phrases on them to praise girl power, from things like "girls can change the world" to a dedicated section of sport and hobby-related items that encouraged girls to pursue athletics. There wasn't quite as much of a push for Justice exclusivity with these, as in subtly advertising that if you practice sports in your Love Softball Justice shirt, then you'd be even better at sports and cooler while doing it, but instead just again latched onto these existing features and hobbies that girls were already interested in and promoting the Justice-ification of them to reach a wider audience and make the point that anyone could be a Justice girl, no matter what you were into. And if you wanted to be the ultimate Justice girl, you could even have your birthday party hosted at a Justice store too. I had the privilege of attending one of these parties once, and I'm pretty sure the whole store was closed up while the party went on. We decorated blank Justice brand t-shirts with neon-colored puffy paint, which was really just the pinnacle of young girl birthday parties at the time. Being surrounded by the bright and flashy Justice storefront while my friend wore some kind of birthday girl crown and sash, and 6 of us 9-year-olds all decorated with puffy paint was definitely a core memory for me, even if it wasn't even my birthday. This birthday party sleep shirt sold by Justice, even though it's made for a sleepover party, really highlights the aesthetic of Justice parties and its products in general. Despite having some decent values like embracing who you are and female empowerment, even if they were really only pandering to drive up sales, Justice still had its negatives. The main thing I remember beyond the cute styles of the clothes at the store was how expensive everything was. Because I was a kid, I couldn't give you any exact price numbers, let alone comparisons between other stores like it at the time, but I at least remembered that I wasn't usually allowed a huge Justice shopping spree, and that my mom would mainly only take my sister and I when there was a sale going on. Despite having above average prices, even if the matching sets and overly girly products probably seemed worth the price to me, Justice actually ended up closing all of its stores in 2021 due to a bankruptcy within its parent company. But that wouldn't stop them. Justice still exists as a brand today, except now it's sold exclusively through the Justice website and Walmart. When I first found out that Justice, the Justice, Just for Girls, powerhouse of obnoxious tween fashion choices, was now being sold through Walmart, I did not know how to take it. I want to make the disclaimer that I have no problems at all with shopping through Walmart in general. I've definitely found some decent clothes there before, and I like that their prices are typically pretty cheap. But when it comes to this brand that was once at the top, with its cartoon monkey mascot and embroidered heart logo recognized as status symbols, now being stripped of the identity I originally knew it as and being sold at one of the most accessible supercenters there is, well, it surprised me, to say the least. Again, I don't necessarily have a problem with Justice items being sold through Walmart, but the biggest change after the bankruptcy that got to me was mostly the price difference, and it stopped me in my tracks. Walmart prices are known to be cheap, which is mostly for the best as far as affordability for the average American goes, but I remember Justice being so centered around how it was a specialty store of its own and how exclusive it felt to have their clothes, and seeing them sold at such low prices I guess just made me feel both a little nostalgic for the original iteration of the brand and I think a little jealous that it's so affordable now. In addition to dropping prices and dedicated physical stores, Justice has had a bit of an overhaul in general. The clothes can still be pretty hyper-feminine and flashy, but the brand has shifted to include more muted colors, basic designs, and modern styles. When I look at the majority of the newer Justice clothes, a lot of the products seem more grown-up and universally fashionable, as opposed to being the largely tween-targeted designs of the past. The biggest giveaway that the Justice style has changed is that for most of these clothes, I wouldn't immediately be able to tell that they were Justice branded if you didn't tell me, and it's not just because I don't recognize any peace signs or cartoon monkeys on them anymore. This shift to a more modern and arguably more mature style isn't necessarily good or bad, it's just an observation. But I think it does lead to an interesting point overall that the tween demographic is, in a way, kind of just fading out of existence. Obviously, the kids between the ages of 9 and 14 still exist, but they're hardly being referred to or treated as tweens anymore, at least not the way that I remember them. The awkward stage of growing up and discovering yourself has been all but erased by the rise of social media and influencer culture, where now children as young as the early tween age of 9, or even younger, are adopting the styles and culture that they constantly see around them. This makes the original intention of Justice and its older clothing items more and more obsolete as the years go on, as young girls are more likely to want to dress like the older girls that they see online instead of like the preteens that they actually are. Not to mention that tweens aren't just now desiring to look like grown-ups, but are following more cultural trends centered around more mature themes and wanting to act more like grown-ups too. Awkward and self-discovering young girls don't need a brightly colored clothing store of their own anymore if they aren't nearly as awkward and lastingly self-discovering. In addition to the more modern and mature approach, Justice has also become more diverse and inclusive since 2015, with a plus-size fashion range and also more plus-size and diverse models being featured in their campaigns. As much as I long for the feeling of the late 2000s Justice brand, I do have to admit that their catalogs before weren't always the most inclusive, so this is definitely a step in the right direction. Interestingly, Limited 2, which merged with Justice back in 2009, has since been revived as a separate brand again and is sold at different department stores as well as Walmart and Amazon. Between Limited 2, Justice, and Delia's, the fashion world is definitely going full force into this Y2K revival trend, and I'm actually kind of here for it. And even though they just don't make the plaid peace sign sets or smiling food graphic tees the way they used to anymore, I'm still glad that another generation will get to enjoy the wonders of Justice in their own way. A huge thank you to Kayla Gary, M. Wee, Kevin Evans, The Goomba Mattress, Dylan Webb, Oinen Omondor, Paper Sam, Sarah, and the rest of my patrons for supporting me. I made this justice-themed t-shirt to say thanks. I hope you like it.